It's Thursday, so you know what that means. How's it going, everybody? It's Warren, and welcome to this week's Theory Thursday, my segment where I pick theories that you all submitted to be entered in a monthly contest. Each week you will vote on a winner, and at the end of the month you will vote for your overall favorite theory. Right now, the monthly winner will receive an IMAX gift card so you and a friend can go see the latest Marvel movie. Last week's winner was theory number 4 from Austin Green. Congrats, Austin, you are now entered in the pool of champions. This week we have some amazing theories, some short, some long, some extremely detailed, so let's just jump right into it. Our first theory today comes from Casera Calzada, and Casera says, what if Doctor Strange's whole use of the word Endgame was actually a hint for Tony? Because a lot of us, even me, forgot that Doctor Strange was not the first person to use the term Endgame. It was actually Tony in Age of Ultron.
But that up there, that's the Endgame. How are you guys planning on beating that? Together. We'll lose. And we'll do that together too.
Casera goes on to say, and as we all know, they were no longer the Avengers after Civil War. So let's say that Tony remembers Doctor Strange mentioned Endgame to him, and he goes back whether in time with the quantum realm or just remembers while trying to find the deeper meaning to Doctor Strange's words, and he happens upon the conversation with Steve and himself, and they realize that they have to fight together to stop Thanos. Casera also says that, also if you remember in the Endgame trailer, when Marvel Studios turns to dust, that dust becomes the A symbol for Avengers, and maybe that's hinting towards the Avengers assembling, which ties into the leak that there's a scene with 40 plus characters in it in the movie. So I definitely have to agree that Doctor Strange said Endgame for a very specific reason. Even Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, said in an interview that Doctor Strange said Endgame for a very specific reason because they knew that's what the title would be for Avengers 4, Avengers Endgame. So since he said it for a very specific reason, it's obviously going to place some importance in Avengers Endgame. Plus, it's the name of the title, so Doctor Strange could have very well been hinting to Tony about something. And I also have to agree that the key to defeating Thanos is the Avengers doing it together. If time travel is involved, I think they will go back to the time of Civil War and keep the Avengers from breaking up. That way, when Thanos comes, the Avengers will all be together and can fight him together. So that's theory number 1, on to theory number 2. Theory number 2 comes from Zenith Mehta, a 15-year-old from India. Zenith says that we know in Avengers 4 there will be time travel. Remaining heroes will travel back in time to defeat Thanos from starting the quest of the Infinity Stones and defeat him in the past. So instead of fighting Thanos as he is right now, they'll go back in time and try to defeat him before he gathers all of the Infinity Stones. Zenith goes on to say that after the Avengers defeat Thanos, they will end up creating a new timeline where events of Infinity War never happened, and no one will remember anything except for the heroes that went back in time and fought Thanos. Zenith says that during this battle against Thanos, some of the Avengers will die, specifically Thor and Iron Man. This theory has proof from the Far From Home trailer. We know that in the end of Infinity War, 50% of the population is dead. But in the Far From Home trailer, everything seems normal. This is due to the new timeline where the events of Infinity War never happened, but Tony Stark is dead. Zenith says that this is why Happy is with Aunt May and Peter and taking care of Peter as Tony did before. And this is also why Peter doesn't have the Iron Spider suit in the Far From Home trailer, because the events of Infinity War never happened, so Peter never got the Iron Spider suit. This theory does have some merit to it because it does seem like everything is just completely normal in Spider-Man Far From Home. And if the Avengers do go back in time and keep Thanos from getting the Infinity Stones, that will drastically affect the future. And depending on how you view time, everything they do could definitely create a new timeline, one where the snap never happened. Remember, Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, said that Spider-Man Far From Home takes place after the events of Avengers Endgame. But if Avengers Endgame creates a new timeline, then that new timeline technically takes place after the events of Avengers Endgame. So it could very well be possible. And that's it for theory number 2, on to theory number 3. Theory number 3 comes from Samuel, 15 years old from Puerto Rico, and his friend Sebastian. Samuel has a theory on how he thinks Avengers Endgame is going to go down. He says that the movie will start off with Thanos on Titan II watching the sunrise on a grateful universe. It'll then cut to the Avengers facility where some of the Avengers such as Rocket and Rhodey will have left to go search for some of the heroes that may have survived the snap. Steve and Natasha are figuring things out while Banner is looking at the missing heroes. We then cut to Ant-Man, who is stuck inside of the quantum realm, who gets out of the quantum realm thanks to the help of one of his ants. When he gets out, he sees the dust on the floor but ignores it and gets in his van to go search for people. When he's driving, he doesn't see anybody, and when he can't find anybody that he knows, he gets worried and goes to the Avengers headquarters. And that's where we see the scene with him in the Avengers Endgame trailer. They explain to Scott everything that happened, and Scott realizes that the ashes were from Hank, Janet, and Hope. Then he freaks out, wondering about his daughter, and he starts asking about all of the other heroes, Spider-Man, Wanda, Bucky, and asks where Tony is. We see Steve thinking about Tony, and it cuts to Tony and Nebula on the Benatar. They've already tracked Earth, but don't have enough fuel to get there, and Tony is about to die. Tony finishes his message to Pepper, and Nebula asks about Pepper, and they get to know each other. And then Captain Marvel shows up, and the two of them explain who they are and what exactly happened with Thanos. Then Captain Marvel, being afraid of what happened to Nick Fury, pushes them to Earth to the Avengers facility. The Avengers reunite and Tony reunites with Pepper. And then Captain Marvel starts talking about time travel and how she can do it. Then Scott remembers what Janet said about the time vortexes in the quantum realm. Tony and Scott then work on quantum realm suits to go inside of the quantum realm to collect time loop fragments. They are successful and they end up designing suits to use the time loop fragments to be able to travel through time. They then talk about a plan to go back in time and collect the Infinity Stones, that way the Infinity Stones that Thanos has currently disappear. Then the Avengers break off into separate missions. Ant-Man, Captain America, and Iron Man go back to 2012 and get the Mind Stone from Loki's scepter. In the current time, Natasha sees the news and sees that people are dead in the streets of Japan with arrows in their backs. She knows it's Clint, so she goes to Japan. When she finds him, she says, "This isn't you. I can help you. We're family." Clint finishes the conversation by taking off his mask, turns around and says, "I don't have one." Then they go back to the Avengers HQ. Scott, Steve, and Tony get back, and Tony says he needs to go back to get the Tesseract. And Thor says that he'll go get the Reality Stone. Tony throws on a SHIELD uniform and goes back to 2012 and gets the Tesseract. Thor goes back in time to where he kills Malekith and gets the Reality Stone. But he also sees himself from the past, gives himself a little chuckle, and takes Mjolnir from him. Thor then returns with the Reality Stone, Stormbreaker, and Mjolnir. Thor then remembers when he met Doctor Strange, so he goes back in time to talk to him. Doctor Strange realizes that the fate of the universe depends on him giving the Time Stone to Thor, so he gives it to him. Thor then goes to Nidavellir but doesn't find Eitri, but he does take the Infinity Gauntlet prototype. He comes back and gives it to Tony, and Tony makes a new suit called the Infinity Suit. Natasha and Clint come back, and Clint talks to Captain Marvel about the Skrulls. Nebula then says that she can go back in time and get the Power Stone, so she goes back in time and takes it from Gamora and Quill. She gets back and she explains the Soul Stone to the Avengers, and the Avengers decide that they will not sacrifice another life to retrieve it. But they have 5 stones and prepare for battle. They go back in time to where Wanda blows up the Mind Stone, and right when Thanos is about to reverse time, the Avengers show up. Thanos is confused, so he uses the Space Stone to teleport, but Tony uses the Mind Stone to read his mind. So they quickly follow Thanos to his planet. There, Thanos has prepared an army with the Reality Stone and has used the Soul Stone to bring back the Black Order. The Avengers fight and Captain America ends up using Mjolnir. The Avengers end up defeating Thanos, and they use the stones to undo the snap and destroy the stolen stones. And then Tony and Steve rest watching the sunrise on a grateful universe. So that's how Avengers Endgame could go down from Samuel, and I think there are a lot of elements in this theory that could actually happen in the movie. Specifically, the Avengers going back in time to collect the Infinity Stones and Tony Stark designing an Infinity Suit. So that's theory number 3. On to number 4. Theory number 4 comes from Connor Fenwick. And Connor's theory involves the even bigger threat that has been mentioned to come in Avengers Endgame. If you're not familiar with the bigger threat, it was mentioned in a Toy Leak description that we got that the Avengers would face off against an even bigger threat. And then in the book Thanos Titan Consumed, which connects directly to the MCU, it was again stated that there would be an even bigger threat in Avengers Endgame. Connor states that because Thanos completed his plan to collect all of the Infinity Stones and wipe out 50% of all living beings, and he completed his destiny, Eternity shows up. He shows up because Thanos has been tampering with space, time, and reality and becomes a villain for Thanos. And this actually becomes a bit of an advantage for the remaining Avengers because Eternity is on their side. This actually happens in the comics. Eternity shows up and goes head to head with Thanos. But unfortunately, since Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet, he has the power to control everything and anything. So Thanos ends up defeating Eternity. And there was actually an early plot leak that said Eternity actually shows up. Maybe Eternity knows that he can't take on Thanos while he has the Infinity Gauntlet, but he can help the Avengers. That's something I would love to see happen, and we do know that Marvel is planning on taking Phase 4 into the cosmos, so maybe Eternity could be a good way to do that. So that's theory number 4, and on to the final theory, number 5. Number 5 comes from Ryan Vetter, and Ryan's theory is based off of Captain America in the Avengers Endgame trailer. Ryan says that the reason we see Captain America in his stealth suit in the Avengers Endgame trailer, and the reason we see him in his original Avengers suit in some leaked photos, is because he's wearing these suits to blend in with the different time periods that he travels to when they go back in time. This is also the reason that he shaves his beard and changes his hair. And this is also the reason that we see him glancing at the picture of Peggy. He knows he's going back in time to where he can actually see her again. And he says that maybe at the end he will finally get his dance with Peggy, which would be a great closing scene for Cap in the MCU. I do have to agree that if the Avengers do go back in time, they'll have to blend in somehow. Besides changing the exact events that they plan on changing to defeat Thanos, they don't want to affect anything else because that could affect the future. So they definitely don't want anybody seeing them and realizing that they're from the future. And I do think the Avengers will each have to go back in time to periods that meant a great deal to them, and obviously Captain America will have to go back and see Peggy if this is the case. And we do see him looking at the picture of her, so there's a good chance that this could happen. So that's it for this week's 5 theories. Let's do a quick recap. Theory number 1 was that Doctor Strange said Endgame as a hint to Tony, and the Avengers will have to fight together if they want to stand a chance to defeat Thanos. Theory number 2 states that the Avengers will go back in time to defeat Thanos, and when they do, they will create a new timeline where the snap never happened. And this is why in the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, everything seems completely normal. Number 3 is a theory on how Avengers Endgame will happen. The Avengers will go on separate missions to collect 5 Infinity Stones and fight against Thanos when he has 5 Infinity Stones. Number 4 is that the bigger threat that is coming is actually Eternity, and Eternity will be on the Avengers side. And number 5 is that the reason we see Captain America in different suits is because he's blending in with the different time periods that he will travel back to, and at the end he finally gets his dance with Peggy. So that's it for Theory Thursday this week. Don't forget to vote on which theory you like the most. If you have a theory of your own and want to submit it for a chance to end up on Theory Thursday, you can submit it to cosmictheorythursdays@gmail.com. The instructions for Theory Thursdays are in the description down below. Let me know what you thought about all of these amazing theories this week, and I'll see you next Thursday for the next episode of Theory Thursdays. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date on everything Marvel, DC, and superhero related, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.